would somebody who maybe they're estranged from their family, they don't get along, they have different political beliefs, they really don't even care for their family. I mean, I think that would be the person who needs ancestral healing the most. How
Yeah.
can somebody who's really disconnected from their family use this tool to help?
It's a great question. And more often than not, those are the people I work with, is they have a total disconnect from family because growing up was so painful. And that's where you do genealogy. So, in genealogy, there are charts of mom's parents, mom's dad, mom's moms, you go back generations. We sit down and we draw a court card, and court cards in tarot are 16 court cards that basically represent personalities. And in fact, just for curiosity, you might look at this. Google, there are a lot of articles that associate the 16 tarot cards with the 16 Myers-Briggs personality types. It's really, really interesting. So we draw a court card for, we'll go back maybe 3 generations, 4 generations. We'll draw a court card for each. And once we draw a card, we put it back and then we keep drawing. It is fascinating to see, if you go down one family line, you start seeing patterns. So if you're an abusive family, you might see that type of personality come out through 4 or 5 generations. And so then you say, okay, I want to work with the generation before this started to find out, how did this pattern start? How did this abusive pattern come about? So take a pattern like, we'll never have enough money, a pattern of lack. It may actually have started with somebody who came to America with a dime in his pocket. I mean, it might have been a real thing, but over time, down through generations, it's kind of morphed into, we don't have enough money. You can't go to college. You can't afford that dress. So we really work with finding where the pattern started and then going back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So then let's take this a step further. Once you've discovered the pattern,
right?
Then what do you do with it?
Okay, so using tarot, and I don't know if people who are watching this today know tarot, so I'm gonna give you a little outline. We will draw a major arcana card, and those are archetypal cards that represent kind of the big things in life, death, rebirth. We draw a major arcana asking, really, what was the theme of your life? We're talking to person, Knight of Wands back there, 6 generations, who was before the pattern. Okay, so we draw a card saying, what's the theme of your life? Then we start drawing minor arcana cards, which are the everyday cards. It's the going to the store cards. And we'll say, okay, tell us something about your life. And then, because they are beyond that pattern, we start asking questions. Do you know how this pattern started? How can I heal this pattern? How can I be the one in the family to break this pattern? And I see this a lot in people who have addiction through generations, is they want to be the one to break the pattern. So they work with a person in the family who did not have that pattern. Okay, it's like you have your own team. Okay, so you have your team and you're drawing cards, asking one question after another. So, you, even if you don't know tarot, you can sit there and draw cards, look at the symbols. Oh, what's that mean to me? I'm looking at a card right now. It's like, okay, here's this Queen of Wands. What is she? She's got that black cat. She's got fire above her. What would she say to me? What is she telling me? What do I have to burn away? The black cat. What's my intuition telling me? So that's what you do. It's really a process of sitting down and doing question and answers.
And let's also make it clear that any tarot deck will do. I mean, you've got the Rider-Waite deck there.
I have a typical, yes, I have a typical deck.
Mhm.
I have the Rider-Waite Smith. And I'm glad you asked that because, or I'm glad you said that because the deck you use really matters. And people ask, what deck should I use? Well, I actually use Carrie Paris's Relative Tarot. It's a great ancestral deck. But I talked to a fellow who had read my book, and he asked his ancestors, he asked his British ancestors, should I use a Celtic based deck like Druidcraft? It's a great Celtic deck. And they said, well, we don't like that one. It's kind of blah, blah, blah. So then he asked his French ancestors, should I use a Marseille deck? Well, we'd like that. So he actually asked the ancestors yes, no questions of what deck to use. And he said, they're so picky. So ask the ancestors. And, there are cards and decks for every continent except Antarctica. So there's a chart on my own website that has, I've broken it down by continent. So you can say, here are African decks. And what's the problem is there are decks that are African, but there are not decks that are Ivory Coast, Senegal, Ghana. Unfortunately, we don't have that. And in the US, we do have decks that are Native American, that are hoodoo decks, that are slave-based early American colonial era decks. So, and in the UK, there's a ton of Celtic decks or very British Arthurian decks. So it is important what deck you use. It would be silly for me to use an African American deck. I don't have that heritage. I don't relate.
Yeah. Now, do you personally use a different deck for different branches of your tree? I mean, I assume that you've got more than one nationality floating around in your DNA.
I do. Thank you. I do actually. I do use the Druidcraft because I do have my biggest hunk of DNA is actually Irish. And I love the Druidcraft deck. But I also will use, well, as I said, I use the Relative Tarot a lot. Weirdly, sometimes I will don't ask me why, sometimes I will weirdly pick up a deck that is cats. And I think there is something in genetically that I am so drawn to cats. And so I'm trying to figure out, where did that come from historically? Because it has to be important or I wouldn't be drawn to it. There's something in my own history. So, I don't know what that is. I can't tell you, but I know that once in a while I'll pick up a cat deck and it has the perfect image for me. So experiment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There must have been one of your great grannies or whatever who just really loved that was the cat lady.
The cat lady.
Thanks for listening. Check out Castle Gate, a novel based on my own ancestral healing journey at lisabonis.com. In 1921, 4 men set off from Scotland to the United States. Will Garrock, his brother Pete, his son Willie, and his nephew Thomas, all coal miners. They left behind the miners' rows and the nationwide mining strike with its soup kitchens. Their destination was Castlegate, Utah, where they had kin to welcome them before sending for their wives and children. They prospered in America, working in one of the finest mines in Utah. Until that tragic day, March 8th, 1924. Disaster struck. 3 explosions, trapping 171 men inside. Rescue crews worked tirelessly for days, but sadly, they could not save a soul. Women were widowed and children were orphaned, and some never recovered from their broken hearts. Castlegate is the true and tragic saga of a Scottish family whose dreams of finding their fortunes in the bountiful coal mines of Castlegate, Utah during the Prohibition era explode in one of the most devastating mine disasters in American history. Learn more at lisabonace.com.